Derek, sorry for moving one of those markers. Did Derek tell you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
It's all good.
it was up underneath the stern of the boat when we put beta board,
Yeah.
and I went back and stopped in a hurry. Good thing I did. I would have stuck that chain on the wheel, and I grabbed it and gaffed it, threw it up on the dock, and I said, "Oops, I think that was that was a marker that was here."
No, it's all good. That was reference that,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, good. Yeah. Anyhow.
So your airplane fits in the wrong place?
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
I text Derek, sorry. All right, I've got 5 o'clock. I called the meeting to order today, Monday, March 28th, 2022. Roll call, we have Selectman Howdy Goodwin, Eric Eaton, Mackenzie Jewett, Devin Buck, Candy Thurlow, Town Manager Jesse Dunbar, and Town Clerk Katie Dandere. Adoption of agenda. Is there anything anybody would like to change on the agenda? All right, we have approval of minutes. We have the minutes from Monday, March 21st.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of March 21st, 2022.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from March 21st, 2022. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, now we have approval of warrants. More than one warrant this week, too. Been just one. We have warrant 91 for $9,939.61. 92 for $8,215.87. 93 for $123,178.57. And 94 for $15,594.68.
I'll make a motion to approve warrants 91 through 94.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve warrants 91 through 94. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, now we have regular business. We have FY23 budget, the school budget. Andrea, do you want to start with that one, or no, you don't? You
Go to the next item.
you want me to give a summary of where we've gotten on my part, or if you can?
Sure, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I told you guys before that we had some meetings with the space committee about possible immediate need for space for classrooms, and looked into modulars, stick builds, whatever, to get the immediate need, and then I'll let you handle the dollar part. Yeah. That's all you.
So we just I guess it was just this year that we had a committee that started. We've been for probably the last 4 or 5 years. We've been having conversations about the need for expansion. We've been putting up walls in different places and trying to reconfigure things as best we can to make the space that we need. But we're just simply tapped out. There's I honestly am trying to look at closets that we have. Kate, plug your ears. To try to figure out what we can turn into an office or what we can make an additional space, because we're truly tapped out. And then just within the last 2 weeks, we've had people reach out about additional needs that might be coming our way for next year, and trying to figure out how to continue to meet the student needs without any additional space. What we're looking at is having to put some people on carts probably and make some pretty significant changes to space in order to do that. So in the last year or so, even though we've been talking about it and we've been trying to get a committee going for probably the last 2 or 3 years, just within the last year, we've had a committee that started meeting to actually start to entertain and try to figure out how do we solve this problem. And that's made up of myself, Carrie, Keith, Jamie, Roger Salmon, and Jessica Bass. And so all of us except for Jessica Bass met last week. Was it last week or the week before?
Last week, yeah. Been pretty quick.
Very quickly.
Yeah.
So last Thursday, I guess it was.
Thursday before, because I told the group
that committee met, and we were just talking about what the needs are currently within the building, and the recommendation was made that we really need to do something about the space to try to address it immediately. And I was asked to start to look into what are some of our options. So we've explored the idea of yurts, which are are pricey, and we've looked into what it would be like to lease or rent portables versus buying portables. We've looked into stick builds and whatnot, with the hope that a stick build would be with that. And my husband, who would have absolutely nothing to do with any kind of contracting or building, but is a contractor on the island, I asked him, he loves it when I do this, to quickly put together some sort of, if he could just try to get some prices together for us to give us a rough estimate. And, 75 to 100,000 is not where we land. So what we're coming back to, which was not at all an original intention, is we're coming back to talk with you folks about the possibility of amending our budget in order to reflect, the addition of either building or bringing in 2 additional classroom spaces, to help us out for the next couple of years until we're able to really solve the problems at Tremont and possibly expand the school. So if you look at the budget, I did update the 1 page, and then the budget that you have here has, the additional items are listed out, but Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong, they're also rolled into the budget now. So the individual line items do reflect now what this, they do reflect the additional items in their appropriate line. But they're also still broken out so you can see what those look like on the very last page. So when the school committee held a special meeting last week, I don't remember what day it was, but they met last week to have this conversation, to take a look at the quotes that we've been given for modular classrooms, and I'm happy to kind of review with you what some of those costs were, versus stick build. We kind of threw out the idea of yurts pretty quickly, and they approved, we changed the title of one of the additional items to just be space needs, so that it would include planning, and also additional space. And that would give us flexibility to be able to try to figure out if it makes more sense to bring in a portable or if it would make more sense to try to do a stick build. I think generally what I'm hearing is people leaning towards a stick build because it is truly ungodly expensive to bring in a portable and then to have it removed. So a lot of companies won't rent a portables to you, or won't sell them because they can make so much money renting them. Anyway, so I'm happy to go over what the different costs were approximately for those different options. But what the school committee decided to move forward with was putting in the ability for us to spend up to $250,000 for both planning, which in talking with who's the gentleman that came to speak with us? Architect. Anyway, we've been told that it could be anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 to start the planning process and have somebody come in and help us with that. We had originally decided to put in $60,000 for that, and on the high end of that. But then the remainder of that would be able to be used for either bringing in a portable or additional classroom space. And it would give us the flexibility without delineating exactly how that was going to be spent, to spend less if things come in less, or if things come in on the higher end. And God knows that construction costs right now are unbelievable. So that's kind of how we landed where we're at right now. What is reflected in here is $250,000, up to $250,000 to potentially be spent for the building costs and planning, which brings us up to a 6.4 from what was a 2.6% increase for town appropriation to a 6.4% increase. So
we did move some money around though.
We did take, yes. So originally when we met and we added that in, the shift in the budget was higher. I can't remember exactly what it was, but in order to try to eliminate some of that, say it again. It was 8 points something. We tried to lower the cost then by taking out, help me out here, Nancy, we took out $50,000. We were not going to transfer the $25,000 to the reserve, and then we would take $50,000 additional out of the reserve, so that it would take off $75,000 $100,000 essentially, and that doesn't affect the overall budget, but it does affect what the taxpayers see and what the appropriation is.
Is that 50,000 that was taken out, is that reflected in, these last reserves that are here, like the maintenance? Which one did it come out of?
It will be taken out of next year, so it's
Oh,
not
okay.
reflected in
I
this
getcha.
year's
Yep.
amount. That's at the end of this year.
Mhm.
So we would have approximately 100,000.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. You're
which
still
is-
leaving enough in there, yep.
Yeah, exactly. So that's essentially why we are here, because I think that, you know, we have continued to kind of put off and kick things down the road, and I don't think we can any longer.
Yeah.
So I wanna hear from you folks, and I want us to be able to answer some questions and help you think this through.
Yeah, and why everybody on the board here, why we looked at stick built too, was because the lease, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the lease just to set up a classroom was like 65,000, just to set it up. And then you pay $3,500 a month, and then it was like 65 plus what, 10%, I believe, to remove it. So if you only used it for a year, you're already locked in 130,000 plus the year's lease, and then,
If you
I
use
mean-
it for 3 or 4 years, then you're double the cost of the stick bill use.
yeah, easily, yeah. It's,
And it's probably gonna be a couple of years at least,
I
right?
think so.
Before
I think so.
the big
My
addition goes
concern
on.
was is like, we truly have nowhere else to put anyone.
it would take you 5 years, I would think, in my own opinion, to get an actual large addition on the
Yeah.
school. By the time, you know, you get taxpayers to approve it and then get contractors the way everything is now, I mean, I think 5 years would be probably on the good side too.
Yeah.
Are the numbers in the school going up?
The numbers in the school have stayed right between 110 and 120, so, but we are the only, us and Tremont are the only 2 districts that are expected to continue to grow. Our needs though, and I can tell you that our special ed needs have continued to increase pretty dramatically. Our K-4 special ed teacher right now has close to 30 kids alone on her caseload, which is, and some of them are, you know, pretty significant needs that require pretty specific equipment and whatnot, and so, it's just the needs are so diverse, I guess, and so much different than what that building is built for, that's where we're at. And hopefully, I'm hoping that like some things will change here next year where, you know, we won't have all of our tables tucked away all the time, we'll be able to go back to doing some things like eating lunch in the cafeteria instead of in a classroom, or hopefully, but it won't, I mean, we're also looking a couple years ahead at hopefully being able to bring our pre-K program over to Tremont at some point, and one of the things that we talked about, is that likely CDS, and Mike might be able to speak to this before too long, but it's likely that within the next 5 or so years that CDS, which is Child Development Services, they serve 3-year-olds, primarily 3 and 4-year-olds, but that they kind of will phase out, and that those responsibilities will move towards the school. So I don't know if you want to share anything more about that, but this is Mike's boy, I don't think that he's
No.
a superintendent, and he's doing a fantastic job. So anyway, I'll let you talk to that for a second if you want.
CDS, the Child Development Services. So most states across the country utilize schools to provide services for 4-year-old through 12th grade, because they know that those kids are going to end up in your schools anyway. So to provide services for early education is an important step in making sure that the kids have what they need. In Maine, they created the CDS organization, which was to provide those birth to age 4 services that were spread out through organizations throughout towns and municipalities. Over the years, it's been become really difficult for CDS to provide that support, and funding has been really difficult to find PTs, OTs to work with kids, or speech therapists. So the idea over the last year and a half, there's a bill in front of the legislature right now to be able to create a transition for at least for the 4-year-olds, 3 or 4-year-olds, so that schools would be responsible for them. The services still may take place in other places, but most likely more and more more schools will incorporate pre-K, so then you have those individuals in your schools. And then, according to the bill as it stands right now, and it's from the Education Committee right now, the bill says that the state will pay 100% for the special ed costs. That's the big deal that we would have to worry about in education, because we're finding that those costs keep rising and rising. And as you know, for years, the state paid below 50% in terms of those costs. We're up to 55% now. And that's taken, I can't remember when they passed the fact that they were gonna have to pay all of those services, and slowly been building and building over the years. The idea of having those 4-year-olds in your school and potentially having spaces to be able to provide some of those other services would be a good thing to have for our smaller local schools, so we can serve those kids who will end up as kindergartners. If we can get them early on and be the ones who are in control of that, that might be better.
So what other questions can we answer for you guys?
I've got a few things.
Yeah.
First of all, it's a scary number.
Yeah, believe me,
Now,
I'm the last person
that-
who wants to come before you guys and ask for more.
Okay, none of the ARPA funds, the COVID funds, whatever they call them, are available for any of these uses.
Those have all already had to be allocated, like before we even came into this school year, they had to be allocated.
Okay. After the town share, I don't believe has yet, but that's, okay. Can Pacific Hall serve any purpose, like storage or, something like that? That's the building we got that's sitting empty. I know there's been a lot go on about trying.
I think the challenge a lot of times with storage is that, like, when it's off campus, then getting what you need is off campus, but there might be some things, that could potentially go into storage. Even that doesn't solve the problem of, like, where to put people.
Okay, well, what I was wondering if you had a room full of stuff that might be able.
We don't have
Yeah.
any, like, there are some schools that you could go into where there are rooms where you could remove what's in there and you could put, we don't have anything like that.
Okay.
Like, all of our storage is in
Okay.
something that is essentially a closet.
Okay.
And part of what, like, the honest conversations that I've been having are like, can we store the paper somewhere else? So that, like, as social worker, somebody could work in this closet with a kid, or, and so that truly is where we're at. Like, we don't have anywhere else that we can put cafeteria tables that need to be stored, because our gym is also our cafeteria, so that they can't stay out during the day, they have to be stored somewhere so that our gym can be used. So it's, I'm happy to do everything I can to try to continue to figure it out, but then I think the challenge is that the needs keep coming at us, and I don't think they're going to change, because it's like, especially if we're looking to eventually bring a pre-K in and possibly then have to consider 3- and 4-year-olds both. They have separate regulations, like even those would probably have to have separate classrooms, because we typically have to have 3- and 4-year-olds separated. So that's anyway.
Okay. And basically what you're looking at this point is just 2 classrooms, no plumbing or.
I am not asking to put a
Yeah.
bathroom in at all, like,
Yeah.
any movement that we would make, and would be, I mean, if those states say that they somehow get worked into whatever the grand picture of the school eventually is, then maybe we would have a conversation about plumbing or something to be put in there, but, at this point, I just need space, and I would put something out there so that there is circulation frequently enough with the kids, so that it's like a specialist classroom or interventionists, so that the kids every half an hour, 45 minutes, there would be a rotation, so they could come in and use the bathroom in the school and whatnot, but, that would just increase the cost, and so we're trying to stay away from that.
When I was in school, we had a portable out there. Well, you too, Eric, I think. Did they have the portables out there when you were there? And there was a ramp that came in, and you could go in and use there was never any plumbing, I don't believe, in any of them, that I remember.
Well, it sounds like 30 to 60,000 to plan. That's way on the high side, but if you're going to try to incorporate it into some, the future expansion, that makes more sense.
30 to 60 to plan the whole expansion.
Yeah, that's the plan,
That is
the
not to
expansion.
plan this structure.
Oh,
That is
okay.
the big picture
Oh, okay.
expansion.
That makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
That is something.
I was gonna say, I could design a couple empty classrooms in about 20 minutes.
Yeah, so that is, I mean, that was the initial ask, was the 60,000 for the planning, so that we could have somebody come in and that we could actually start the planning process for a needs assessment. And, just having somebody come in, take a look at and figure out, okay, what does our property allow us to do, what does our building as it is allow us to do? And what are the needs that we're trying to meet?
So we went up
And-
190,000, not,
What's that?
we went up 190,000, not 250,000,
Correct.
because we had already had the 60,000 in there.
Right, and in looking at like what it would cost to buy a portable is about 197,000 to buy a portable classroom. If we were to rent it, it's even more than that over the course of, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
If we were trying to, so I do think probably, even though right now I know all too well, cause I listen to it every single night when my husband comes home, how expensive things are right now. But I do think the cheapest way to do this is to design something creatively. My husband even was like, you know, you should, if this maybe isn't gonna stick around, is there a possibility of designing it somehow so that it could be taken apart afterwards and sold, or, I don't know anything about that, but, I think that there is a need to think creatively about the space so that we can try to keep costs down. I think there's a lot of great people that have already kind of helped to think this through in a matter of like, I mean, I think in 3 days' time, the number of resources that we looked through, got estimates on, were able to pull things together, it's been pretty impressive, so I owe a lot of thanks to other people in this space who have helped us figure that out in a very quick amount of time.
How many square feet are you looking for?
I don't have any idea about that, like, well, I guess what I should say is like a portable, if we were looking at a portable, those are typically like 24 by 60.
Yeah, the stick built was 24 by 60 that Keith got the estimate on up to Hammond.
So
He got one up
that's
there
what a
for.
typical like two-room portable is.
Two-room,
Yep.
So-
And if I can speak just to him for a minute about, you know, why this kind of happened so fast and wasn't included in the original budget. When Jandria came to us, or was part of the meeting that we had for the Space Committee and talked about the possibility of a couple more kids with really high needs coming in, it just became clear that this couldn't wait another year. They've already spent the last couple of years, you know, cramming people into closets and chopping up the band room to the point where there's really not enough space in the band room for them to function the way that they need to. So, you know, it just didn't feel like it could wait another year. And then the other thing I wanted to just mention was on that planning, the 30 to 60,000, our hope is that we can work out a deal like what the high school is doing with the project that's happening up there for the science and library wing, where they found an architect who was willing to do the planning, and then if we use them for the architecture for the actual project, then they rolled that into the cost of the architecture, so it was kind of like a freebie based on them getting the bid.
So is the $60,000 for planning on top of the 250,000?
No.
No, that's
It's
included in the
already-
200.
put it all into the same
Okay.
bucket.
Yeah, and-
You're looking more like at 250, I would say, like 200 for the building, 50 for the planning is more, probably closer to what it actually will be.
I think it's very important that we continue with project planning, you know, I mean, Sandra, maybe covered it, but since I've been on the board, we've sort of picked when they can, and I think we're gonna keep having these kind of, tight situations where we run up against this. If we don't kind of get cracking on the planning, it's like hard to do both things at once, but we really do need to keep moving forward with the planning to avoid more, difficult situations.
And another thing that I worry about with that is right now we've got Roger St. Amand on our committee who is driving the bus for the Space Committee, and he's very knowledgeable about all this, but we're not sure, you know, if he'll go for another term again and stay with it. So, you know, I feel like it's important for us to move forward on this when we have somebody who really has that knowledge, because you never know if we'll get somebody again.
And there's no other places you can cut in the budget, which I know you guys have crunched and scribbled and scratched and.
We did take the 25,000 out of the budget that was supposed to go to the reserve.
Yeah.
But,
That
and
paving
then
has to happen this year.
On the revenue side, we took out 50 out of the reserve
Yeah.
next year.
The paving
kind of
is,
skinning that a little bit.
the paving is one of those things, again, that like we put it in as an additional item for I think probably the last 3 years, and we keep taking it out. And, I was outside, I was a one-on-one at school today, and, I mean, it just is so huge, so, the challenge I think is that like, again, the further we push those things off, the more expensive they are, when like when the whole thing has kind of crumbled and fallen apart, then at this point, the reason that's so high is because we can't just skim coat it anymore, like we really have to go in, you have to flatten everything out, you have to dig everything up and start all over again. We are trying to look into the possibility of like using other surfaces, so maybe it doesn't have to be pavement that all goes back down. I'd love to see that there's some additional green space, and so, we're trying to figure out what that might be able to look like, because it is really expensive to pave, and maybe there's some other options, so, I'm hoping that, even the paving will come in maybe less than that, but like, the parking lot, part of the reason that we've been trying to move along this planning committee is because there's other things like that are coming up. There's other areas that are going to need to be paved before too long, and the challenge if we keep kicking it down the road is we're going to have to redo that at some point, and then if in 5 years we end up putting on an addition, you're gonna end up digging up the 50,000 that you put down in pavement. So please hear me say the last thing I wanna do is be asking you guys for any more money like this. Is not, I appreciate our relationship so much, and I don't wanna tap into too much or ask too much at all. But I don't know how to continue to, I don't want us to have to spend the money and then dig it all back up again and then we've wasted. So,
I guess the bottom line is, what does it do to the tax mills? Like, if everything goes the way that they'd like it to go and everybody's
Yep,
happy.
if it goes in the way that it's proposed right now, it would, the overall tax increase would be 5.4%. And that would be $150 increase on the $250,000.
And 3 to 5% average per year, annual, or
Yeah, we were currently at 3.6.
6, I think. Yeah.
And I will,
$95 per 250 is what we were sitting at.
and it's what now?
And what would you say it would be?
150, so around 50 for $250,000.
the only thing I was wondering, and I think we touched on this before, but, there's some room for stuff in here, but I think Keith had a good idea with maybe reaching out to the people who did the addition, wasn't it Keith, on the school from before, and see about looking into, meeting with them and saying, hey, we need 2 extra classrooms, we need a lunchroom, we need this and that for the addition, and maybe that would help with some of these planning costs. They might throw a pretty good proposal that comes in less, and you actually get some blueprints out of it too.
And
So I think there's room.
So the gentleman that gave us this figure of 60,000
Yep.
actually is part of,
Yeah, I
he used to
remember
work for
Yep.
that company, whoever that company
Mhm.
was, and Keith probably has more of that information, I don't have it right off the top of my head. So he's very familiar with the school, and that addition, because he was part of developing it when that addition was on.
And the bus garage is the other thing. I know I've asked it before, but is there, I didn't know if that would make everybody feel a little bit better is there any way to get away? I know there's a divot there, but is there any way to patch it for a year just to use as is, or? I know I just didn't know how much you get complaints about
I
it.
think the reality, can we keep doing that? Yes, we could either keep it the way that it is and it's,
Mhm.
or we can look in, one of the conversations that came up last year was about putting like some sort, I don't remember what the size is, gravel or something like that in there, and the concern was like, that's gonna fill the bus garage with gravel every time you back in and head over, but, are there other options, possibly, could we, I just think the important thing to note is that that's not going to go away.
No.
We will then eventually have to be asking to pave in front of the bus garage.
Yeah, next year's, even if you could bump one
Yes,
year out of it.
but we are all, oh man, I hate this conversation.
Yeah.
We are, I mean, like, the parking lot at school, we've been patching for years, like, just the regular parking area, and so,
Putting that up.
I really want to make sure that it's clear that, like, the issues, the paving, the space issues, like, those things are not going to be solved by putting 2 rooms in there, or like putting that paving off. Can we get by without doing that? I think that we probably could do another year, and we could probably get creative and figure something out there. But I don't wanna lie to you and tell you that, like, we won't be coming back again next year and then to
Oh, yeah.
ask for it
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
something
for
like
sure.
that. And depending on, like, I don't, things come up, like, we didn't expect the walk-ins to have to be replaced this year. And so we've taken we're gonna take the walk-in freezer out of this year's budget. We have that coming out right now, so that that's not an additional thing. We took that out of the additional items. But we do also have to, replace the refrigerator on top of that. And there was something else that I was just thinking of. Yeah, there's, I don't remember what else I was thinking of, but, there are certain things that just kind of like come up that you don't expect. And so we have tried to, like, even things like professional development for this summer. There's some conferences that I'm planning to send some teachers to this year, and it's about $15,000. And so I don't wanna come and ask, even though I've had board members say to me, like, that should be in the budget, that's professional development. I've asked the Tremont School Fund, so they're funding that, so that doesn't have to go into the budget this year. So I'm trying to find alternative ways to get certain things funded. But I just don't want, I think part of the reason that we haven't put a modular in already is because people then can kind of be like, well, that solves that problem, and it doesn't, it won't solve the problem. So there really is a longer term, big picture that we're trying to solve for.
My concern if we postpone any of these things like the bus garage to next year is that then we'll be looking at a huge thing next year. And then it's like, I feel like a really big hit when we get to next year if anything untoward happens at all.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get creative on some way to soften the blow. This year is a pretty big hit, so it's a.
It hurts this year.
And I was just thinking with that, with like recycled asphalt, I've used that myself
Yeah, I
a
was thinking
lot,
that too.
and, you can take a few yards of recycled asphalt, even the town crew could do it, and dump it in there, compact it, and you'll be surprised at how well that works and how well it packs. And if you do it in the summer, it really packs in hard, and it might, it would last a year. I can pretty much guarantee that for sure. Howdy would know more about it than I would, but.
The buses, I know, gonna buy a new bus here eventually, but
Next year.
Yeah.
what about that line? Is that absolutely critical?
Most of that comes out of the reserve.
Yeah. And that top reserve you're seeing there is actually 100. It's not showing it now because that's the one they said that they're picking 50 out of.
We put about 18,000 a year into that reserve, so that is, like, we don't have the price of the bus that we've added in this year specifically. It's usually just, like, we build it up over about every 5 years.
Yeah, so this year was 18,000 or something,
But
yeah.
you've got you've got 20,000 that if you take the difference, it's 100,000 for a bus, basically. And you're gonna take 80 out of the bus reserve. So you're gonna pay your 20, which is what you usually put in the reserve each year.
Yeah.
I was wondering, you can go up to those places in Brewer and Bangor and get those single-wide mobile homes that are 14 by 60 and put them together and have a 24 by 60, and you can pretty much lay out the, rooms like you want them. Would that be less? they have friggin' wheels underneath them, you can sell it at once. But seriously.
Yeah. I don't know how it is about code and stuff. Keith would be more of that one. You're getting all kinds of questions like Keith, but
No, it wouldn't come close.
Oh.
Sorry.
yeah.
I thought the newer ones were stick construction a lot.
They have really strict guidelines, and that's what we price this out according to.
Yeah.
And by having it down on the ground, you're eliminating all the costs of having decks, ramps, any ADA issues that you run into. And, it has to be at least 36 inches off the ground if it's portable, and then you still have slab under it that's required to reinforce it. So you're not really saving any money.
The
So we
other
could
thought
force them
is,
to go
you know,
on it.
Yeah, yeah.
can people, like, come in and build the building and rent it to you for, you know, they cover the cost and rent it to you for whatever it goes for per month?
I don't know.
You're gonna pay for
I
the
think-
building and rent it to us?
Yeah,
Yeah.
would that work? Like my brother Paul did that to the post office and Sunset, I guess. he said.
Well, they're gonna build in a profit margin, so the town might as well do it for themselves, you know. So.
I think that we can get really creative too with that amount. I think that that's a high figure. I think we all agree it's pretty, but I think that if you contact the right framing companies, Keith had a couple good ideas, get someone in to frame it that maybe is not right from around here, that a framing company comes in, just frames it, put the siding on, walks away, and then have someone local come in, do the inside. I think there's some money to be shaved off that in good shape, but
Really?
I think everybody's,
Think so?
yeah.
With electrical and everything?
Yep. I just think it's not, I mean, I'm not talking a fortune, but I'm talking, you know, I think it's, every penny adds up.
Some,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
It's expensive.
Yeah,
Yep.
we just built our building not long ago across the road, which is basically like that size.
Mm.
Wow, I couldn't imagine spending that much.
I think Keith
Materials
did-
gone up.
You did a estimate at Hammond minus roofing. Did they have roofing or not?
We factored in the extra they only put one bundle of shingles in, but we factored in a full 17 square, but yeah, it was 45,000 just for the material.
Yeah, just, that was insulation, that was carpet though, no wiring, no heat. So you gotta do wire and heat. Yeah,
Labor is
then
times
labor on top
materials
of all
by
that,
2.
yeah.
Yeah,
Just double materials, that's your labor and materials.
Yep.
So 100,000 for materials, labor.
Would it be possible to do something like even plan part of the future expansion? I'd feel so much better about this if it was a permanent solution instead of something you had to get rid of in maybe 3 years. It's just, you know, it's like, even if you didn't do the entire plan, say, well, this corner, we're gonna put up a 2-story classroom with, you know, whatever, someplace you knew it would be permanent. I would feel so much better about spending that money if I knew it was not gonna be just a temporary fix. Something you could incorporate into your plan. I mean,
I think
would-
that would be the ideal way to do it.
yeah, I mean, I don't know how long it would take to plan something like that. But
Afterwards, but, so I think that would be the ideal way to try to look at that. I need more brains at the table than just my own to try to think that through. My specialty area is not construction.
No, I understand, but I mean, again, that makes an awful lot more sense to me than going in and spending $250,000 on, or $200,000 on something that's basically just a throwaway.
So part of the reason that we changed the category to whatever we called it, space needs, was so that we'd have some wiggle room
Yeah.
with, because we just don't have time to put that kind of a plan together. But if we can find somebody who can, you know, do the planning that then says, here's how to make it more permanent, then that'd be great, but.
I wouldn't think that would be that hard if you could just even come up with basically a footprint,
Yeah,
or even a
location.
partial footprint. You know, this is gonna be permanent, this is what we're gonna do, we're gonna pour a foundation here and put up enough space for 2 classrooms, and we're gonna incorporate this into our new design when it gets to that point. I mean, to me, I've built similar to that. It's like, you know, leaving room for expansion or planned expansion, you know?
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I was coming from with the stick build. I think that's
Yeah.
why we lean more towards that, because I have a feeling we call this temporary. It's probably gonna be like minimum of 10-year temporary.
Yeah.
Like I have a feeling once it's there, it's gonna be, which a portable you're just throwing money out the
Yeah,
window.
yeah.
I mean, you're
Yeah,
just,
absolutely.
that's, and then they charge so much to come and get it. At least this is there. If you do decide it won't fit into your new thing 5-10 years down the road, you know, revisit it then, but I just have a feeling it will stick around for once
Well,
it's
that's what I
there.
say, make it permanent.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not gonna cost you much more, if anything, depends on the design.
I
Yeah.
think that,
You
And,
could,
and,
I mean, I guess when you think about that too, depending on the location of it, and again, I don't know what the application would be right this minute, but, that might have an impact on the paving costs too, and that's the case depending on the location.
yeah, I can think of a couple spots right off the top of my head, and I don't know if they'd be good, but I mean, this, you know, I know you've been put a lot of creative thought into this, but sometimes it helps having another set of eyes or whatever, look at
Every
it.
single time.
And again, it's just,
Yeah,
you
we're
know,
welcome to having you come and the Space Committee, you know, we're planning to have Lawson and Wilson come over and talk to us.
Yeah, Lawson's
from
got a
his
background in that, yeah.
perspective. But, you know, like I said, we just didn't have time to
yeah.
get to the point where we had a better plan, so.
Well, I hear this about maybe paving and then maybe ripping it up because you don't know what you're gonna do, and then putting up,
Yeah.
you know, spending this money on buildings that you don't really want, but they're gonna solve the need temporarily. I hate to do that.
Oh,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
exactly why I've been like for the
Yeah.
last 4 years saying, we need to get this
Yeah.
process going
Yeah.
because we are continuing to do projects to this building that, we're just going to have to tear up and redo.
Yeah, well, that's the one thing I would really try to avoid on so many levels. That bothers me. But,
I'm with you.
Keith has some input on why the attached versus non-attached, right? Is
Yeah,
that what you're
so
gonna say?
I hear what you're saying, Kevin. I have 2 points to make, but first of all, I think if that space is there all by itself, then they can build a new addition without interrupting with any of that classroom, what's going on, because suddenly they're building in that space and those 2 rooms are useless the whole time they're building. So I honestly feel it could be a 10, 15-year-old structure or put pre-K or someone over there. It doesn't have to go away, but in my mind, it doesn't fit into the grand scheme of the addition to the school. I think it has to be at least 20 feet away, and any new addition to the school, unless we want to put in a hydrant system and sprinkle that school, it has to be a pretty decent fire rating barrier between the new addition and what's existing. So I just think it's maybe sacrificial or something, of what you want to refer to it as, but it can stay there permanently. It doesn't have to go away. But if any new part to that school is going to have to be really beefed up in order to prevent having to sprinkle our school, because that's going to be a very, very expensive operation. If you think, because then we're suddenly going to go over that 20,000 square feet, and that's going to cost a lot more money. But
Okay.
second of all, I really hate spending money at planning. I just think people passing around papers, but when Mrs. True over here is sending out emails at 5:30 in the morning and still there at 7 o'clock tonight, she does not need one more thing on the plate. But, I mean, like I said, I hate seeing spending money there. I know it's taxes, but,
no,
either someone else is gonna have to step up and do it, or we're gonna hire someone to do it. So,
I think going ahead without a plan's probably not great either. Why the 20 feet apart?
ask Augusta.
No, is that a regulation? That's,
Or
Yeah,
was it a-
any temporary structures or adjacent structures adjacent to a public school have to be at least 20 feet away. Yeah.
okay.
No matter if they're built out of concrete or if they're built out of wood, they have to be 20 feet in space apart.
Okay. And what I was suggesting doesn't need to be attached at this point. It might be something that get incorporated in when it was done.
Right.
I'm just thinking something permanent
Yeah.
rather than something that's a disposable.
Keith, it does say, I just want to pull this up because I was going to ask you. It says the portable should be a minimum of 20 feet.
The old
Should.
portable was about 5.
Should. It says should in there.
Well, that's portable too.
Right.
Hardship.
You said portable,
Well,
right?
no, it's a addition structure.
Okay.
Mark's
Okay.
side.
Yeah. I think if you try to prove hardship, you know that you
Yeah, you
have
couldn't drive
19.5 feet, but.
Yeah.
I don't.
Temporary interim spaces is what it's
You
called.
see if it was permanent.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, no,
I
but what-
know there's recording on, but from what Augusta says, we should call it temporary no matter what we're doing, or it's gonna flag a lot more expenses.
Mhm.
Okay?
Yeah.
And the cost will up astronomically.
So when you go over a certain square footage, you're required to have sprinklers.
Yeah.
What's that, is that gonna happen when it's redone anyway?
If with a new addition, an architect can build in a double firewall, which the school now already has that. I don't know if you know, there's between the gymnasium and the French rooms up, there's essentially a firewall, it's a hallway. But
Yep.
all the doors automatically close when the alarm system goes off,
Okay,
and that's all engineered firewall
okay.
to separate the existing buildings they attach to. We'd have to do the same thing, any new addition would have to have
20-foot corridor?
5 foot. 2 hour range. 20 foot.
20 foot wide?
Can I ask what it would, like, if we looked at the bus garage, if we did something different with the bus garage for this year, knowing that, like, we will have to do something about that at some point, what does that take from the town in order for us to maybe get somebody to come over with, I know nothing about recycled asphalt or anything either, but.
Jesse, you can, I mean, it's probably, I don't know how big, I've seen a small divot there, I don't know how big it, if there's anything I didn't see, but, I mean, I would think, like, literally 3 yards in the back of one of the trucks and take it out, level it, just with whatever, and compact it. I mean, that's like a 4-hour project, yeah, and they could have it so it would, you know, that stuff really does work really well. And
I
it's-
trust you guys, I know nothing about that, so, I mean, if that's something that, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but if that feels like that's something that would help this year for you folks, I'm certainly open to looking at other options and trying to work with Jesse to see if we can get the town to come on.
Jesse, if we took out the 21,600, well, it wouldn't it probably couldn't be all of that if we're gonna use some of it to do a project, but,
It's not gonna be.
That's gonna be
Just town could eat it.
300, yeah, we'll eat, yeah, town will take, yeah, if that, yeah.
so if you took out $21,000 or all of it, whatever, what does that do to the overall percentage?
It's not gonna,
Not gonna be a lot, it's not gonna get you to 5%, but,
yeah, I mean, it might be like 5.3 or 5.2.
Oh, really?
yeah, I mean, it says right here, it saves you $4.27 on a $100,000 value.
How far down the road do you think you're gonna come up with a design? I mean, what time frame, for the new school? And I know that's not gonna be for the new school
I
year,
know,
obviously.
And I mean, again, like, that whole process has cost that goes along with it too, so like this
Yeah.
year, we're working on our hope would be to keep some funds in for planning, and that would just kind of assess our needs and help us to figure out what we can do,
Mhm.
and then I think, I wish Roger were here, but then I think the next, the next step would be to start to work on plans after that, so
Yeah.
I would think that it might be, like, next year, we would be working on assessing, and the following year, we might be looking to try to get plans, which I know, is not cheap.
Yeah,
I don't know exactly what that would look like for Tremont,
And
Yeah.
consolidations of schools, that's sort of off the table for now. I mean, that's been thrown around for years and years, that's probably not.
some of the last conversations that we had about that were, you couldn't consolidate Tremont and Pematic into one building. which,
Sure, right.
Like, I'm gonna start sweating even.
No.
But like, just capacity wise.
Sure.
You can't fit them all
Right.
in there together, they're too big. I don't know what it like, there's still conversations about middle school and whatnot.
Right.
The challenge there is that, like, if you take out, originally we were talking about 7th and 8th graders in the middle school, we would easily fill that pre-K then at that point. So like, it doesn't eliminate some of the other
Okay.
needs that we currently have. So I think that like those conversations have, over the last couple of years, that part of how we landed here is because we've looked at other options. And
Even if we were to have a 7-8 middle school, we would still need more space for pre-K.
And I think they said at one point, didn't they say like that study, if we went this route, no one has gone this route yet, but to do the drawings, we'll call them, the drawings in that's, I think that was like a year, cause didn't they say they were gonna do like a survey of the needs throughout the town and what people think, what the kids think, what the employees think, what the teachers think, and I think, so you're looking at like a year before you even have drawings. And then that's just like preliminary
Yeah.
drawings.
And that's not part of this,
Yeah.
this would be kind of the like collecting information, figuring
yeah.
out what the needs are, figuring out what the spaces that you have to work with, and then the drawings are kind of like another piece.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I would say Bar Harbor's experience, though they started in 2018 with looking at doing renovations and potentially, getting rid of the Connor School. That took a year of, just like you said, Jamie, they did meetings with the faculty, they had parents, they talked to kids, and then they had the meetings with the community, and then they came up and had an architect design a plan. Then COVID hit, so they were looking at a year and a half of planning, and then now they're just getting started in terms of finding an architect to take the design after all of that work. So then, so that's 2 years in terms of, all right, now they're gonna work this year on doing the design work, and then it becomes a bond. So, maybe start construction in 3 years, 2 years.
And that's the thing why I said about
Yeah.
the permanent building versus the leased building, because if you say, oh, we're gonna do this in 4 years, well, really, that's gonna be like 8 years, and then by the time you pay the lease, 8 years, and then you have to move into it, and, it's a big process.
We've also had conversations about, considering some different district-wide programs, and a lot of those things have kind of halted, because everything that we've had has been consumed by what we've been dealing with the last couple of years with COVID. But there have been conversations too that I think we're hopeful to try to continue to move forward about possibly some consolidated programming. But we're again, I don't, what I've tried to tell everybody I can is just, if that stuff doesn't move forward and we don't have these conversations and start planning ourselves, we're gonna continue to be in kind of a desperate situation. So unfortunately, it does feel like two things are running pretty parallel to each other. I'm not sure how else to, I'm not sure what other choices.
How about doing something like, and just an example, but like pre-K and kindergarten, in 2 standalone brand new classrooms that are gonna be permanent. And they'll even be detached buildings down the road or something like that. But again, permanent structures. And again, that may be a bad example of what to put into into the classrooms. But if you had something that you could naturally separate, you wouldn't have the issues with tying the buildings together down the road. And then you'd have a permanent structure, which in the long run is going to be cheaper than anything we've discussed, anything else.
Yeah, the problem comes back to no bathroom or anything.
Our grandkids couldn't do that.
No, but again, band rooms, I don't know,
That's exactly what I'm thinking right
Yeah.
now, is that the class, whatever goes out there will be, we have interventionists who work with kids 20 minutes, 30 minutes at a
Mhm.
time, and then they rotate through. We have a social worker that, again, a social worker is a need that we have that is funded this year through our COVID funds. And so, though there are certain things that could easily go out there without plumbing and bathroom. Band, for example, our band room, we had to cut a decent part off because we had to create an isolation space, and we had to move our nurse's office when all of this started. And so there was a natural space for us to be able to take a hallway in the band room and, or I guess it wasn't a hallway then, but it's a hallway now, and create an isolation space with direct exit out of the building. And so you lost probably, I don't know how wide is a hallway, that much space in our band room, and that space is just doesn't function well at this point. So I think that those are some natural, easier transitions to have.
And the intervention rooms you're talking about, I'm assuming you don't need a full-size classroom for those.
No,
So you might be
that's
able-
part of again, what we have people doubled up now
Yeah.
is, so you could have people sharing some spaces out there depending on what it is, as long as it's not something that has to be confidential. Guidance, social work, some of those things need confidentiality, so you need spaces where there's privacy.
what I was thinking is even, you know, instead of one big space, a series of smaller office kind of size, 10 by 10, 12 by 12, whatever, something like that, and that would give you several more options if you did something like that. And again, that might be something that would kind of be natural to isolate from the rest of the school. I mean, I would love to see something that's not going to have to be disposed of.
That, I mean, that is the, like, I think the last thing that I would like to see is, you know, just then, I think that part of what, like, in pulling this together in a week, part of what needs to happen is to be able to actually sit down with somebody who can help us think through really what we need and what's best going to serve our needs, I think. At this rate, I might just put my own office out there.
It really is just location is the biggest question, right? I mean,
Right.
where to put it. So it's gonna work well with the rest of everything. So it's gonna take a little bit of thought and you guys-
That's part of, I think, why the flexibility in like just how we put the funds together is because, if we were going to say, all right, we're gonna pull in a portable and have it for the next 3 years, we can pretty quickly figure out the math on that and we can determine exactly what we're gonna need for funds. We wanna be able to sit down and talk to somebody and really kind of figure this out, so I'm not sure exactly, what this structure will look like. We have an approximate size and we know, you know, that it would be helpful to have at least 2 classes out there, but maybe we're talking about putting some offices that are out there instead. Or maybe you I mean, there's a bunch of different things that you could do with the 2 different sides of the building, but, having the flexibility and the time to be able to think that through is really what we need.
How much time do you think this building will buy you guys? Like, I mean, the changes occur every year. I mean, and we don't think an addition to the school is gonna happen, what did you say, 8 years, 4 years, 5 years?
Yeah.
I mean, are we gonna have to have this conversation like every 2 years? We have to add another building while we're figuring out the addition? You know what I mean? Like, how much time is this gonna buy you?
So I think that's gonna help us to meet our immediate needs, like what we have right now.
Now, but what about like next year or the year after?
I think that it will give us more flexibility with the space that we have for a couple of years, like, I
Okay.
think I'll be able to kind of take another look at, like all of our classrooms, grade level classrooms, I think are pretty well set the way that they are. I'm not looking at needing to, at this point anyway, I'm not looking at needing like an additional kindergarten classroom or, you know, two classrooms per grade level or anything like that. But I do think that, so I think that this will help us over the next couple of years. It'll give us flexibility with how to better meet the needs for the next couple of years. I just think we can't stop the conversation about planning, and hopefully some of the other conversations about middle school and whatnot, those continue to happen. Because we're trying to figure out also, like, do we need to be keeping our 7th and 8th graders in mind, or are they potentially going to be going somewhere else? And in that case, that gives us a couple of extra classrooms to consider and play with, so,
And if we do things with like pocket doors or air walls that, you know, could then possibly make that space a little more fluid too. I think you
yeah,
can
just
look
depending
down
on
the
what you
road
do,
at
yeah.
what the needs are year over year, because they do change every year based on what the needs are of the kids coming in or cycling out with special needs. That's where you have
I
to really
don't
be able to
foresee
be
the
flexible.
need to like come back next year.
That's what I mean, right?
I also don't want that, I don't wanna just have buildings pumping up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Either, that is
Right.
not at all my goal, so something dramatic I feel like would have to happen if that were the case, for me to be coming back and asking for anything else. This would just like alleviate some pretty significant pressure that we've been feeling for the last couple of years, and hopefully allow time for other conversations to take place so that as we are planning, we know what we're truly planning for. Right now, we know that we wanna be able to absorb and have our own pre-K. I think we're gonna have enough students for that. There's a possibility of needing 3 and 4-year-old pre-K. And then the topic of middle school, and those kind of all come into play.
Because it's been like, what, since the mid to late 90s since that addition has been done, so there hasn't been any, no additions on there for quite some time now. So it's filled the you know, it's worked. You guys have made it work for now, and I wouldn't think that if we did this, then, you know, I would think it would last until you do an addition, an official addition.
Kind of has to.
Yeah, no, I know. That's,
We
yeah.
can't be doing this every 2
Yeah,
years.
yeah,
Like, that's
yeah.
a lot.
So what do you guys think? Take out the repairs to the bus garage parking lot and then make this happen, or?
Yeah, how does that affect, I know you said it was very small, but just so we have something.
That sound what you're thinking, maybe?
On the budget, Jesse's
install
gonna
the
have
playground
different
maybe,
figures,
because if we're gonna put this,
$4.27
we have to have a playground. is-
or something per 100,000 is
Yeah.
what it, but
Yeah,
that's
that's a
based
big
on
thing. Where does
the
it go?
latest tax
Right, I
rate
mean-
calculation sheet that I did.
Sucks because the playground.
So let's see, what
laid
am I gonna
out,
do with
it has
all
to
that
go
extra money?
Yeah, really.
With all, yeah, in between, you know, it can't be 20 feet, it can't be 2 feet.
Get half a burger.
So it drops it to, from 150 per 250,000, 240. So $10.
Eric, just to answer your question too, I think they were looking towards the black property, towards that end of the building, towards the greenhouses,
Right,
I
that's,
think,
that's,
kind of.
yeah, and that's
And,
where
I
the
mean,
regular,
The shape might change too, like it could be an L shape to make it work with the property or whatever, but like Andrea said, this was like, Keith and Nate got quotes the next day. So, I mean, it was a quick put together, like instant, so it's, just rough ideas, so I think that it could fit in with, but I think that was the intention, right, was that end of the building?
I think so, I mean, I really need to be able to talk with someone to help develop a plan, because it, well, I mean, we're talking, there's gotta be certain,
Yeah.
there's certain, if you attach it to the building, that could have certain implications. I'm interested in trying to think about, like, okay, well, the playground space, and is there a way to do something that would help us out with the paving costs too? There might be, I just don't have that, yeah, I don't have that information right this minute. But I'd like to be able to have those conversations and try to see if there is a way to limit the paving costs, depending on where this gets placed.
What were you thinking, Howdy? I know you said.
I was just saying if we could take away from some of the playground paving, if that was gonna,
Yep. I know, I think the only, just my personal opinion, I think the only place that you could take any more than the bus garage, would be the space, under the space planning title, if you had, cause I mean, the addition hopefully comes in a lot less than 200, but if you just throw in that that's 200, and you maybe could get by with some, you know, a little less in there for 1 year's worth of planning, and know that it would have to go into next year's, to reduce. You know, I think that would be an easier spot to reduce, and just my opinion, but.
right, take out the 50,000 and put like 10,000 in.
Or,
Right,
yeah, I
plan.
don't,
planning.
I don't know how that works, so with that,
It's hard to.
did anybody else catch on that, how the payment process went with, I can't remember, when they spoke on, like, they said it could be between 30 and 60,000.
Right.
I can't remember, didn't she say like it was so much to, not to start, but like so much to get going on this project, and then it was, I think the payments were divided into sections over time. So I'm not sure if it was, I don't think it was like, you have to sign a check tomorrow for, for $50,000. So you might, that would be, I would think, the only other spot that would take it, but.
Save, yeah, but
Yeah.
you're still gonna kind of prove it because you don't know how those steps of payments are gonna be, right?
Yeah.
Usually they'll do a percentage for whatever phase you do. There's so much percentage in on the architect fees and stuff, or design fees. But anything that you actually complete during next year would have to be paid out of next year. That you couldn't, like, pay it later.
Yeah.
No, I just meant like if we did the,
Yeah.
say 25% of the, or 50% of the planning got done next year, then we could pay for 50% of that, just trying to get creative without, and then 50% of it the next year could be planning, and I don't know.
Does the payment have to be a one-time, or can that be bundled into that same fund so that we then would be able to make decisions based on how much the actual building costs on what we did for paving?
Actually, you've got you authorize the budget by cost center, and all of your capital outlay and all of your operation and maintenance are all under the same cost center. So you got wiggle room between all of those different items within the operation, maintenance, and capital outlay. Even if you've got it in one line, you may overspend one line and underspend another.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't realize we could do that, cause then, so we could say, say, Eric just says 40,000, you wanna deduct it by 40, so the school can take and choose where they wanna take that from and where they wanna spend that. Is that-
Well, you have the leeway
Yes.
within the cost center.
Yeah.
And then you have 5% leeway across cost centers, but depending on, what
Yeah, no, I get it,
happens
yeah,
in the next year.
Right, how much things need to be moved around is.
yeah.
So the idea of potentially taking 30,000 out of the planning piece, depending on what, in doing a year's worth and then putting that 30,000 in next year, maybe before or something like that. That's going to be.
Yeah, it's kind of what you're getting at.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's,
Pulling 50,000 out
yeah,
in terms of
yeah.
to protect taxation.
That's just my own, you guys, whatever, but I just think that's the only spot that I think the paving could get, depending on where this goes and what, I mean, that could change all over the place, so you might save a pile on paving, but it might not, but, I think the planning would be the easiest spot to take it from.
If you did take 50 out of the whole budget,
Yeah,
it would come in at like 4.81% for your appropriation.
That's for the
instead of
total budget
six-
you're talking, Nancy?
Instead of 6.47.
what would it be, 4 point
That's
something?
like 50
Yeah.
grand away from.
That's the blended, that's counting the entire, that's not just school.
That's just school budget.
Just
Yeah,
school. Oh,
that's just
that's
school
what-
taking 50 out.
Okay.
That goes from the
That
6.8.
doesn't-
Okay, that's what I was trying to-
Jesse's got, he can play with his numbers there, but
Okay,
this is
okay, well,
just what. I
that's-
just put a couple
that's your side of it.
scenarios.
Yeah.
It would make the blended budget 4.6 instead of
4.6.
your original is 3.6.
Yeah.
They're proposing 5.4.
Yeah,
It'd be a 4.6.
See, that's
it's
decent.
getting a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
decent, yeah.
Yeah,
If you took 50 out.
and I know I've said it a bunch, but I mean, if this was a permanent solution, I'd feel an awful lot better about spending the money. If this, if something that could remain there somehow. I know it's gonna require some more planning and maybe more down the road, but it makes a lot of sense to me. You could
So
probably put it,
if we take the 30,000 out of the planning, just say the planning budget of 60,000.
Yeah.
Do you think that'll put us in a jam this year for planning all the expansion of the school, or do you think we'll be able to make it work? I mean, honest opinion. Bring it on.
I would think that in terms of like, if you were to just do a lump 50, and you know that okay, so the 21 for paving, we will do that, and then allow January some flexibility in terms of where the placement of that building is, because maybe the paving isn't so much, so you might be able to have
Yeah.
a little bit more for the planning, and you're taking a little bit out of that 52 for planning. The idea of removing the lump sum of 50 allows a little bit more flexibility in terms of how you might use that within that cost center for plant maintenance, because it might not be the 30 totally from the planning, because you might need more for that, but maybe where the building is allows the paving for the playground area to be less.
Yeah.
In terms
If the building's a little less, if the paving's 6,000 or 8,000 under, and you start adding it up, then you might have what you need for planning it.
Does that work for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we will figure it out and we'll make it work.
I agree. Definitely appreciate the thoughtfulness and the
Yeah.
back and forth and trying to make it
Right.
make it work.
Yeah.
I think we definitely see the need for the space,
Yeah.
but it's
Yes.
just.
Yeah, I appreciate this, like, I see on your faces and stuff.
That's a lot of
I just appreciate that. I think that's what I appreciate, so.
I know, we know what needs to happen, it's just hard to cram everything into this, and I know it was like, I was part of the process, and I still, it happened so quick, and everything is just, yeah, I mean, there's nothing, we're trying, everybody's trying to fit what we can in there.
I'm fine with that number if it, if it's not gonna put too much of a burden on the school.
So, Jesse,
What's the number?
Yeah, what's the, just,
you want us to cut the paving for the, we're gonna cut the paving for the bus garage?
No,
Or
just,
just take out
just-
50,000?
just take out 50.
So,
just proposed total budget
So the
would be.
proposed total town appropriation.
I can't do this because last time, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna give the school 70 grand for the whole year. So.
Yeah.
The town appropriation would be $3,148,493.
One more time, Jesse.
$3,148,493.
No, this is my.
I motion to request the town manager to include $3,148,493 as the Tremont School Fund appropriation in the FY23 budget.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to request the town manager to include $3,148,493 as the Tremont School Fund appropriation in the FY23 budget. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All
Oh,
right.
that's a lot.
Yeah, yesterday, right?
There, been done.
Yeah.
So then you have to come back to vote on it again.
Yep.
So when do you need this from us? So if we meet on Wednesday, you're gonna be okay?
Like not tomorrow, but the day after.
You know, if we had one more of us, we could be bringing
Yeah.
It's like a dinner somewhere, we can
Yeah. All right, next we have tax acquired property. We have 2 bids on tax acquired property.
I think either one of them's here. All right, any discussion on this, or just do it?
Do it.
Anyone got anything to add?
I wish them the best of luck.
No kidding. I'll do it. What the hell? I make a motion to award the tax acquired property located at map 7, lot 25B to Lynn Brown in the amount of $61,000.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to award the tax acquired property located at map 7, lot 25B to Lynn Brown in the amount of $61,000. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Next is the annual town meeting warrant.
So, we will, since you've amended that amount, you will need to update the warrant.
Yes.
But we cannot do that until the school committee approves the amount you just recommended tonight.
So Monday.
We really would prefer it be done this week so that we can get the warrant to the town report for printing. It's the last thing we need, so
Yeah.
if you wouldn't mind scheduling a meeting for this Thursday, that would be the only thing on the agenda, is to approve the warrant. They're going to meet prior to Thursday, so they can approve it on their end.
What's the date, Thursday?
31st.
31st.
It would only change that one article.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine with me. If we just have to do it just to approve that, then just come in, as long as you don't stack other stuff with you. Don't take advantage of this, Jesse. One thing, that's it.
That's it.
No town manager report.
No report, yeah, that's right, Abby.
Just the one.
At 5? Okay.
Yep, okay, so we'll table the annual town meeting warrant for our next meeting. All right, Dix Point Road reconstruction. Jesse, I will let you.
Yep. So in your
explain.
packet, there's a proposal, I guess, you can call it, from
Thanks, Keith.
Greg Johnson, the town's engineer for the reconstruction of Dix Point Road, which you guys have previously budgeted for that in the FY22 budget. You budgeted $140,000 and currently have budgeted $50,000 for FY23. And we do have the tentative grant from the DEP for the stream crossing of $42,500. The proposal from Greg Johnston is to cover the bid process and inspecting quality assurance during construction throughout. Total budget cost $16,000. I would just add that we did not go this route with the previous road construction projects, but the board at the time did still request that the engineer check in on the projects and make recommendations during the construction, which did lead to increased costs because he wasn't involved in the beginning. So I think it would be wise to have him in the beginning to avoid unexpected construction expenses.
I think this one needs engineering more than the other ones also.
Yeah.
Yep.
Does his fee include the stream crossing, any engineering on that, or is that part of the
I think
grant?
there was a note saying it was
Yeah.
in right at the bottom.
Where, I missed it, where's it at?
Right on the
His signature
exclusion,
line.
page number 2. You look great. So it just says,
Oh,
where you,
okay.
down where you sign it. It
Okay.
says exclusion.
I missed that. Okay,
No, I'm fine with it, and I know
yeah,
it actually added up quicker than expected last time, even though we didn't use him
Yeah.
a year ago, so, yeah.
no, I think it's a good idea.
I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to sign the engineering, design, and construction services budget estimate from GF Johnson and Associates for reconstruction work on Dix Point Road.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to authorize the town manager to sign the engineering, design, and construction services budget estimate from GF Johnson and Associates for reconstruction work on Dix Point Road. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, we have next, Hillrest Cemetery lot sales. We have in our packet. We have lot 231, is that the, yep, got it right here.
251.
251, yeah, sorry, yeah.
I'll make a motion to authorize the town manager to sell lot 251 in Hillrest Cemetery to Teresa Grady.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to authorize the town manager to sell lot 251 in Hillrest Cemetery to Teresa Grady. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Next is a quitclaim deed. Jesse, you wanna explain that just a little bit?
Yep,
So we-
so this is a quitclaim deed for, tax map 12 lot 3 at 243 Harvard Drive.
Mhm.
And there were tax liens filed in 2008 and 2010, they were never discharged, after payment was made.
Yep.
So there is no payment pending for the town.
I'll make a motion to sign a quitclaim release deed to the Woods of Eden LLC for one property located at 243 Harbor Drive, tax map 12, lot 3, since all assessed liens, fees, and costs have now been paid.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to sign a quitclaim release deed to the Woods of Eden LLC for one property located at 243 Harbor Drive, tax map 12, lot 3, since all assessed liens, fees, and costs have now been paid. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, town manager's report.
Alright. In the last week, I have worked on the draft warrant with the clerk. Meeting prep for tonight's meeting, worked on the cemetery deed, I attended the League of Towns meeting, attended the planning board site walk and meeting last Tuesday. Prepared Board of Appeals notices, had a Zoom meeting with Mission Broadband, as part of the broadband work the county is doing. They're reaching out to all the towns in the county that they haven't heard from, to discuss our potential broadband need. And opened tax acquired property bids and attended an MMA managers interchange in Bangor. Office staff, the clerk was working on the draft warrant and day-to-day office operations. Public Works, worked on summer rims for truck 9, cleaned up the dump area out here, put up a temporary mailbox that was knocked over by the plow, finished, David helped scrape, sand off the lot out here, redo posted road signs, helping the harbor master with floats, lot cleanup Friday. They are having a roll-off brought in next week to do some cleanup around the Public Works garage out back and inside. Painted some benches and the bathroom floor in the Public Works garage and treated roads. Harbor Master was, replaced a GFCI on the east side ramp, worked on mooring payments, attended the planning board meeting, met with contractors about the Thurston's project that was approved, did plotting for the Thurston's project with Army Corps, plot points, scraped all the ferry terminal floats, removed treads and roofing paper off the ferry terminal ramp to be repaired and replaced, picked up new treads and roofing paper, and worked on QuickBooks and a tunnel issue with the internet between the harbor master's office and the town office. New mooring permits issued, expense voucher, and checking on roads. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to continue work on the harbor planning grant, attend a coastal resilience ordinance workshop, and assist with the upcoming Board of Appeals meeting.
Did the sidewalks get swept? I noticed when they were sweeping last week.
Sidewalks have not been swept yet. The state came about a month early to sweep.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought of that this morning as it's snowing out. I'm going, oh
We typically
no.
don't have ours swept until the last week of April.
Oh, that was the
May.
state going around,
Yeah.
yeah. I was wondering,
So-
cause I'm like, they're doing a terrible job.
The sweeper came in and asked if we wanted it done, we said, not right now, and I said, what if we have to stay on the state road, are you gonna come back?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll
Sure.
clean our sidewalks before you come back.
We are getting a brush for that.
It's
bucket,
in the
right?
FY '23. budget.
Oh, okay.
All right, thanks, Jesse.
Yeah.
Suggestions for the next meeting? And our next meeting date, which now would be Thursday, the 31st, 5 p.m. That's all good with you guys?
Make a motion to confirm the date of the next meeting for Thursday, March 31st at 5 o'clock, right here at the town office.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to confirm the date of the next meeting for Thursday, the 31st at 5 p.m. right here at the town office.
With a very limited agenda.
Yeah, with a very limited agenda, no town manager's
I have
report.
one thing to add.
No.
Not to the agenda, not to the agenda.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Your next meeting was then scheduled for April 4th, next Monday.
Yeah.
And I would just request that we move that to April 11th, if that's fine.
Would we do that now or at the next meeting?
I just need to roughly know so I don't have to prepare packets. for
I'm
it.
fine with that.
Yeah, oh no, I'm fine, I'm fine with not having like number 10 week in a row or whatever this would be.
Yeah.
Twice this week, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, I think that was moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Any
You should probably
discussion?
text us about Thursday.
All those in favor?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, all those in favor?